Alright Saxo fans, episode 50, and hopefully just a big one, not just for the number. We're going to probably try and get the car started. Well, I say started, hopefully cranking. That's probably the first step. Let's do it in baby steps. Cranking, check for leaks for fuel and all that kind of stuff. We need to settle the fuel pressure, so I'll do all of that in this one. We'll get all the front end probably put together once it's cranking, and then we'll go for a fire up. Anyway, so the reason why I haven't done that obviously is that I've never had the ECU and the harness, but I've got that now. So on the bench here, Emerald K6 Plus. I bought this from Plug One Off and had a lot of chats with Matt at Plug One Off. He's been absolutely brilliant, really supportive. So on this particular ECU, he's already mapped in and downloaded the files from a similar car that's got, you know, probably a very similar spec. Obviously, this is not the first time this has been done. So there's hopefully a tune on here that will essentially run the car, and obviously there'll be a bit of fine tuning, which he said we'll work through together. But essentially that should be enough to get me started, which is good. So that's nice and easy. We'll get that mounted in a bit. I need to figure out where to mount that. Harness has been away and been modified as well. So it's the original harness. I obviously cleaned it up and rewrapped it and did all the nice stuff to it. All the green labels are me, just so I know where everything went. But the main job I asked Plug One Off to do was to modify the ECU plug to go straight to an Emerald. There is an adapter available for these. There was an adapter for the single plug ECU. That's been around for a long time, but the 3-plug adapter's only just really become available. So I actually didn't want that. I just wanted it to go straight from the original harness. So that's what's on here. Matt's been kind enough to leave me a few extras on here so I can put my wideband in there, map sensor in there, knock sensor for the mapping. It's all on there. But I think the main thing that I probably need to do in the future, and it's certainly not what I'm going to do now, is you'll notice these two particular plugs are from the original ECU. There was 3. Now all of these wires here are completely redundant, not needed anymore, don't do anything. So I could technically pull all of this out from the whole loom and essentially shave off, you know, quite a bit of weight, I'd imagine. But I'm not going to do that straight away. What I want to do is get everything in, make sure everything works, make sure the engine runs, and then delete them afterwards. And I know that'd be a real pain in the ass to do it on the car, so I'm going to probably just whip it off, do it on the bench, and yeah, make it nice again. So that's the plan. So the first thing really is to try and figure out and get all of this sort of rooted in the right way, and where it's not, you know, going to sort of foul anything the way it shouldn't be, and yeah, just sort of figure out a few bits and bobs. Okay, I'm trying to think, there's no real good way of filming this. It's going to be really dull. So I think what I'll do is I'll probably just skip to it being done, and yeah, and then we'll figure out how to mount the ECU. Right, so I think everything's plugged in, not super tidy, just sort of chucked on for now, just to make sure. Taking the plugs out, so there's obviously no compression to fight. But yeah, everything's plugged in. There's a couple of loose ends. So for example, like Higos, I'm not going to be running those. My map sensor isn't plugged in yet. In fact, I'll probably just plug that in now. Why not? We'll give it a go. Right, okay. So I think we're all plugged in. So I'm expecting essentially engine to turn over without starting. Let's give it a go. So I've got my main switch on here. Okay, that's good. Good start. Engine's turning over, albeit compressionless at the moment. So yeah, now we need to put some fuel in it and do all that sort of stuff. So let me tidy things up now and yeah, think about mounting the ECU. Well, just before we move on to tidying things up and making it a bit more permanent, I was just a bit concerned that it was turning over quite slowly. And I mean, the starter I know is good because I took that out, obviously, of the car when it drove in, you know, almost 3 years ago. All I've done is take it apart, paint the sort of the casings and put it back together again. So there's no soldering or anything involved in doing that. I haven't disturbed any of the circuits, so I'm fairly sure the starter's okay. But what I have done is bought a boost pack for my battery. Now my battery is, as you might know, down here, and that's quite an old battery now. I didn't buy it new. It's been on and off trickle charge, probably the best part of 2 years, and maybe not in the best of condition. So I put a booster pack on it, and it's definitely spinning over better. I also noticed my alternator belt is probably a fraction too tight. I noticed in that clip a second ago there was a bit of a squeak, and I think that's probably just putting a bit too much pressure on the bearings. So I've backed that off, and it seems a bit better now. It actually sounds like a car that wants to start. So let me show you that, and hopefully you'll see the improvement, and then we can start making things a bit more permanent, because right now it looks a right mess. Yeah, it's a bit scary, but anyway, let's show you what it sounds like now with an improved battery condition. And obviously I'm going to have to replace that battery rather than stick a boost pack on it. Right, on to mounting the ECU and tidying the wiring. Now this is a tricky one, simply because the ECU is actually quite a good size, and where ECUs would have been originally over on this wing, obviously I've got a bit of a different header tank set up now, so yeah, and where I've put that, I can't really put the ECU around it. And the problem I've got is the wiring's just like so thick and chunky, and there's so much of it, it just makes mounting it really difficult. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the car started in its format as it is now, so pretty sort of quick and dirty, if you like. Everything's plugged in and roughly where it needs to be. Obviously it probably just needs a bit of tidy up, like, you know, put a few clips here and that sort of stuff. But essentially it should run in its current condition. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the whole harness off again, and I am going to delete out the extra stuff that Matt left in for me. So these two plugs which I cut off, all of those wires I'm going to take out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the ECU in the glove box. So I'm going to drill a hole through the firewall bulkhead somewhere, yeah, you know, down there where I can get to it. Put a bung in there, run it into the cabin, and I think that's probably the best solution. And I think it'll keep things tidier. And also I can delete a load of wiring while I'm there. So yeah, that means like delaying making it nice, but I think probably worth doing. But I am going to get it started as it is, just so I know that when I start messing around with it and deleting wires out and things, it'll be something that I've done rather than something that maybe doesn't work or didn't work in the first place. So I think that's probably maybe the safest way to go about it. Anyway, so as it is then, everything's plugged in, everything works, cranks over, feels like it wants to start. I'm just waiting for a communications cable for the ECU so I can talk to it with a laptop. There's a couple of bits I need to do. I need to do, I don't know what they call it, like a throttle adaptation with the software. So I can do that. I think that's pretty straightforward. I need to input my lambda, so my wideband signal into the ECU. So there's already a cable that comes out the back of the dial for that. So I'll just do a quick and dirty feed in for that. And then I need to do the voltage versus lambda curve, put that into the ECU. Again, pretty straightforward, the information's online. And then it should be okay. But in the meantime, what I'm going to do, and one thing I haven't done yet at all, is put any fuel in it and check for leaks. So that's what we're going to do next. I'm going to go and grab a jerry can, stick a bit of fuel in it, run both pumps up, and then hopefully we get no leaks. And then my cable arrive and we should be good for a quick start. Now, it's obvious I'm not going to run it for very long, you know, 5 seconds most, really. Obviously, it's got no coolant in it or anything like that. Radiator's off. So all I want to know is that it does run, or it does start, and it will attempt an idle. That's the intention. That's all. Nothing more than that. Okay, let's go get some fuel. Right, a few litres of Sainsbury's Super. I'm not going to go mad, I'm just going to put sort of 4 litres in and just see what happens. Right, so fuel in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do the in-tank pump first. Just going to run that on its own. That'll obviously fill the swell pot. And then I'll probably just leave that just for a few minutes and just go around and inspect the system. And then I'll fire up the swell pot after that and see where it's going to leak. So essentially we've got obviously a number of joints at the tank here. The connections there around the filter. Goes all the way through there up to the bulkhead. The bulkhead has got a couple of like proper bulkhead connections, so they potentially are sources of leaks, and then it's just around the actual fuel rail itself. So it's not a huge amount of places for it to leak, but we'll check them. So first of all, let's get the in-tank pump on. Right, so that should have at least pumped some stuff around the system. Tempted to, because I've only put like 4 litres in. Obviously with the swell pot being a litre, all the lines being completely empty, maybe they're another litre potentially. I mean, that's probably, yeah, maybe a bit generous. I don't know, maybe, might be enough. Anyway, I think that's okay. And obviously the main thing is I'm trying to see fuel pressure on the gauge. So at the moment there's nothing, so what we'll do now is we'll do the main fuel pump and then we'll put the swell pot on, and obviously I'll cycle a few times on the ignition because the ignition just primes, it doesn't stay on obviously until the engine's running. Right, let's go for that then. Okay, that's good. So far, not leaking at the swell pot. And just down here, pipes in the way, but we have got, yeah, maybe 1 bar of fuel pressure nearly. Obviously, I haven't set that yet. That's literally as it came from the factory. So now I know there's fuel in the system. I think I'm just going to go around, do a really good visual inspection, make sure there's no drips or leaks or anything. Essentially, you can see my bulkhead connections here. All of these are obviously places where fuel could leak, so need to have a really good look around these. Well, I've had the fuel pumps on and off a few times now with my booster pack on, just to keep the battery alive. But yeah, we're at 3 bar there, so I'm fairly happy with that. Going to leave that where it is. So far, no leaks. Just going to wait and see now. I'm just going to leave it like that and just come back periodically and check that there's nothing horrible going on. But yeah, so fuel pressure's in. Yeah, there's no reason now, other than a few of the little wiring bits and bobs, that I shouldn't be able to start it. So I just want to make sure I've got my comms. So I'm just waiting for that to turn up today, and then we'll attempt to start, I think. Right, struggling with comms at the moment, but there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to give it a start. Obviously, if there's something missing, like crank signal or something like that, then it just won't start. So I'm fairly sure, I'm fairly happy that it's safe to do so. I know the map on there is safe and good to go. So what we'll do is we'll give it an attempt. We'll see what happens. So I'm not going to run it for long, but yeah, let's give it a go. Nearly. Well, that was pretty close. So the only thing I forgot to do was press the boost button on my battery pack, obviously because I know I've got a weak battery, which I've ordered. So we'll give it another go with the battery pack properly on. And at this point, all of my family have arrived. Not for this. And they're all probably going to be sticking their head in the door. So any background noise is obviously down to them.
Good. Was it like a few petrol fumes on a Friday afternoon?
One more time.
Is you already recorded?
Yeah, press the record button pressed.
Press the pause button.
No, is the record button on?
Yeah. Yes!
There we go then, Saxo fans. It runs. So obviously loads and loads of work to go and do now. I'm going to sort all the harness out, get all that moved as I described earlier on. And now I know it works. I can think about putting all the front end on, putting some coolant in it, all that kind of stuff, and making sure it comes up to temperature and there's no leaks. So absolutely delighted with that. I mean, that's, you know, I mean, essentially I started this project, nearly 3 years ago, but obviously I've been thinking about it for a little bit beforehand. So it's probably, 3 years worth of effort to get to today. So I'm absolutely like made up. I'm on cloud 9 right now. So obviously loads of work to do to get it all buttoned up, and we'll do some of that in the next episode. So yeah, thanks for sticking with me. I hope you enjoyed seeing it run for the first time, and yeah, maybe next time we'll have a car that looks a little bit more like it hasn't just been in a crash. But yeah, anyway, thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button, and we'll see you again next time.